Before I tell you what I built, I need to tell you what they gave me. They handed me a pile of rotting lumber and called it an inheritance. They thought they were dumping their trash on me so they could clear the way for my sister's perfect life. They didn't know they were handing me a gold mine with a roof leak, walls that wept mold, windows so cracked the wind came right through them like it owned the place, which, honestly, it probably thought it did. They gave me a backyard choked with weeds taller than me and a front door that didn't lock all the way. They gave me that. And they gave my sister a brand new apartment in the city. Elevator. Gym. Security guard. Curtains my mom picked out herself. Now here's the part they never planned for. Here's the part they should have checked before they handed me what they called garbage and smiled like they were being generous. They never looked at the land. Let that land. Look directly into the camera. Then, not once. My name is Kendra. I am 27 years old. And this is the story of how my family's favoritism accidentally made me the richest person in that room. Stay with me, because the way this ends is something none of them saw coming. And honestly? Neither did I. If you've ever been handed the worst option and told to be grateful, drop a fire in the comments right now. I want to know I'm not alone. The day my parents called me into the living room, I already felt it in the air. That careful, rehearsed kind of quiet that meant they'd already decided everything and this conversation was just the formal announcement. My sister Melissa was already sitting on the couch when I walked in. Calm. Polished. Scrolling her phone like none of this involved her. And I remember thinking, that's the tell right there. She already knew. She already knew and she was performing disinterest the way you do when you've won something and you're trying not to look too happy about it. I crossed my arms. I stood near the doorway. I didn't sit. My dad cleared his throat. He said they had decided, like a board meeting, like a verdict, that they were going to help both of their daughters get a proper start in life. My mom smiled. That specific tight smile she does when she's already rationalized something morally questionable and wants credit for it anyway. Then she said it. Melissa was getting a brand new apartment. Downtown. Modern building. She listed the features like a real estate ad. Elevator. Gym. 24-hour security. Melissa finally looked up from her phone. Smiled. Already picturing herself there. Then my mom turned to me. And Kendra, she said, we're giving you a house. Let the audience sit with that word. A house. It sounds bigger than an apartment, right? That's exactly what I thought for about 3 seconds. For half a second, and I do mean half, hope flickered in my chest. A house. That sounded permanent. That sounded like maybe, just this once, things were going to be equal. Maybe more than equal. Then she showed me the photos. The hope died so fast I almost laughed. Cracked walls. Broken windows. A roof that sagged in the middle like it had given up on itself. Weeds in the yard that had grown so high they'd almost swallowed the porch. It looked like something from a documentary about urban decay. It looked like something the city had condemned and forgotten. My mom rushed to explain. She said I was the practical one. She said this house was full of potential. She said Melissa needed something safe and ready. Safe and ready. Those words burned themselves into the back of my skull. What she was really saying, and I think we all know it, is that Melissa mattered more. She just dressed it up in logic so she didn't have to feel it. I wanted to scream. I wanted to flip that coffee table and tell them exactly what I thought of their version of generosity. I had worked. I had tried. I had never once asked them for less, and yet somehow, less was always what I got. But I was the reasonable daughter. The practical one. So I nodded. I thanked them. I swallowed every word I wanted to say and I signed the papers they slid across the table. The house was mine. No mortgage. No rent. Just mine. I told myself that was something. I moved in a week later. The first night, rain leaked through the ceiling. I found a bucket in what used to be the kitchen, placed it in the middle of the living room floor, and sat on the stairs listening to the drip. 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 The heater didn't work. The floors creaked so loud that every step felt like an accusation. The whole house smelled like damp and dust and years of neglect. I sat there in the dark, in my coat, in a house that didn't want me yet, and I said out loud, "This is still something." Nobody heard me. That was fine. I think that's the thing about being underestimated. You spend a lot of time talking to yourself. You get very good at convincing yourself to keep going when nobody's watching. If this is hitting different right now, hit that subscribe button. I post stories like this every week and I don't want you to miss the next one. I worked 2 jobs. Days at the office, evenings, and weekends at the house. I watched tutorial videos until my eyes burned. I borrowed tools from neighbors who looked at me sideways the first time and with something closer to respect by the third. I patched the roof section by section. I scraped mold off walls until my arms shook. I hauled trash out of that backyard by the truckload, years of other people's garbage piled up like a monument to abandonment. I scraped my knuckles raw on more occasions than I can count. I cried in the car exactly twice. Then I went back in. One neighbor, an old contractor named Art, used to lean over his fence and watch me struggle with the drywall. He told me, "Kid, you're building a palace in a graveyard." I didn't tell him I was actually building a fortress. Slowly, painfully, imperfectly, stubbornly, the house began to change. I refinished the floors by hand. Patched the walls. Replaced the windows one at a time when I could afford it. I tore out the broken front porch and built a small sunroom in its place, taught myself from videos and sheer refusal to fail. I planted a garden out back. Not because I knew anything about gardening, but because I wanted something alive back there. Something that was growing instead of rotting. Months passed. Then a full year. What had been a wreck became a home. Not flashy. Not a showpiece. But solid. Warm. Safe, there's that word again, and entirely mine. The kind of safe that comes from knowing you built it. That nobody handed it to you. That it could not be taken away by a tight smile and a list of features. That's when my parents asked to come see it. I said yes. Of course I said yes. Part of me, the part I'm not always proud of, wanted them to see it. Wanted them to walk through the door of the thing they had handed me like a punishment and understand what it had become. My mom walked in first. She stopped in the entryway. Just stopped. Her eyes moved slowly around the space, the clean walls, the refinished floors catching the afternoon light, the new windows letting sun pour through in a way the old cracked ones never had. Her lips parted. Not in pride. I want to be very clear about that. Not in pride. In calculation. I know that look. I grew up watching that look. It's the look she gets when she's deciding how something can be redistributed. My dad stood just behind her, jaw tight, silent. Melissa wasn't there that day. She didn't need to be. I could already feel her presence in the room like a ghost. My mom turned to me. And she said, slowly, clearly, like this was obvious, "We're taking this house back. It belongs to your sister now. You have 48 hours to move out." I stared at her. Waiting for the part where she laughed. For the part where she said she was just testing me. That part didn't come. She went on. Explaining. Calmly. Logically. How Melissa's apartment was too small compared to this. How family assets needed to be, and I will never forget this word, rebalanced. She said it like a financial advisor. Like she was doing me a favor by including me in the announcement. I said, quietly, that the house was legally mine. She waved her hand. Said paperwork could be handled. My dad didn't say anything. He was still looking at the floors. That hurt more than any word she said. There are people in your life who will watch something wrong happen and choose silence because it's easier. I think that's its own kind of answer. 2 days later, Melissa showed up. She arrived the way she always arrived, like she'd already rehearsed it. Rental truck parked crooked out front. Boxes in her arms. Confidence radiating off her like she was moving into a reward she'd earned simply by existing. She was already narrating out loud where the couch would go, what color she'd paint the bedroom, whether the kitchen got enough light. Then she walked fully inside. And she stopped. The smile fell. The color drained from her face so fast it was almost cinematic. Her eyes darted to the walls. To the floors. To the sunroom I'd built with my own hands where the broken porch used to be. She looked around the space the way someone looks when they suddenly realize they don't understand a situation they thought was simple. She'd been told she was coming to take a house. She walked in and realized she was standing inside a year of someone else's life. And she didn't know what to do with that. My mom, who'd come with her, mistook Melissa's silence for awe. She smiled, pleased. Already picturing this as the happy ending. My dad stayed near the door. And then my mom turned to me again. Repeated it. 48 hours. Like a countdown. I still didn't argue. I still didn't cry. I smiled. Melissa noticed first. She asked, confused, almost nervous, why I was smiling. Because I knew something none of them had thought to look for. And I'd been waiting for this exact moment to tell them. Don't go anywhere, this is the part where everything turns. Like this video so the algorithm shows it to more people who need to hear it. When my parents handed me those papers a year earlier, I read them. All of them. Every page. Every clause. Every footnote. Because I am, they said so themselves, the practical one. The house had been written off as a liability. They never looked at the C3 overlay on the deed. In this city, C3 means you don't just have a house, you have the right to build a high-rise. I wasn't selling a 3-bedroom wreck, I was selling the footprint for a 20-story luxury condo. To the developers, my ruined house was just a pile of bricks standing in the way of a $50 million project. A burden. Something they were happy to be rid of, dressed up as a gift. But as I read through those documents, I noticed something. Something they had clearly not noticed, because if they had, they never would have signed those papers. The land had never been properly transferred back to them after the estate changeover decades earlier. It sat in a legal gray zone, grandfathered into a commercial residential zoning overlap that the surrounding properties didn't share. In plain language, that piece of ground was zoned differently from everything around it. And certain types of developers had been very interested in exactly that kind of land for years. 3 months before my parents showed up to take my house, I'd already had the conversation. A development company had been circling the area. They didn't care about the house. The house was almost irrelevant to them. What they wanted was the land, the location, the access, the zoning classification that made it possible to build something the surrounding plots couldn't support. Once the renovations met basic safety code, the conditional sale agreement would finalize. I had hit safety code 3 weeks before my mother's visit. The money was already sitting in escrow. They came to take my house. The house was already sold. I let my mom finish her speech. I let her say it one more time. We're taking this house back. Then I asked her, calmly, how exactly she planned to do that. She started with family. Said they were my parents. Said family doesn't need permission. I walked to the kitchen counter, the one I had installed with my own hands, and I laid down a folder. The deed. The zoning certificate. The signed development contract. Silence. My dad picked up the papers first. I watched his hands shake as he read. My mom leaned over his shoulder, and I watched her face tighten with every line, every number, every legal term she hadn't anticipated. Melissa stepped closer, and the entitlement drained out of her expression and was replaced by something that looked, for the first time, like genuine fear. I spoke slowly. Clearly. So there would be no misunderstanding. The house was legally mine. The land was legally mine. And in less than 2 weeks, I would own neither, because I was selling. Not to them. Not to Melissa. To the people who had understood its value from the beginning. My mom's voice cracked when she asked how much. I told her the number. Her knees nearly went. It was more than Melissa's apartment had cost them. More than they had ever planned to spend on me in their lives. More than they could come close to matching. They tried everything. Guilt first. My mom's voice went soft, that specific soft she uses when she wants you to feel like you're hurting her by not giving her what she wants. She talked about family. About loyalty. About how this wasn't what she'd intended. Then anger. She said I was being cruel. That I was punishing them for trying to help. Then bargaining. She offered to switch. Give me the apartment instead. As if a furnished apartment with curtains she'd picked out could undo a year of cold floors and scraped knuckles and crying in the car twice. As if that could undo a lifetime of being the practical one. The reasonable one. The one who got the ruins. My dad finally spoke. Said we could work something out. Finally looked me in the eyes when he said it. Too late. That's it. Just those 2 words. Let the audience feel it. I wasn't angry anymore. I want to be clear about that too. By that point, standing in the kitchen of a home I had rebuilt from nothing, holding a contract that had already changed my life, I wasn't angry. I was done. Anger keeps you tied to people. Done sets you free. 2 weeks later, the developers arrived. Melissa never moved in. The boxes went back on the truck, and I watched from across the street as the rental company came to collect it. My parents stopped calling after the 3rd week. The sale finalized quietly, the way good things often do. I stood outside the house one last time before I handed over the keys. I looked at the sunroom. At the garden in the back that was coming up green. At the windows I'd replaced one by one. And I felt something I hadn't expected. Pride. Not spite. Not satisfaction. Just pride. That place had never been my punishment. It had been my test. And I had not known, when I was sitting on those stairs in the dark with a bucket catching rain, that I was passing it. I don't think any of us know we're passing the test while we're in it. That's the whole point of the test. I bought my own place after that. On my terms. No comparisons, no family meetings, no tight smiles. Just peace. Months later I heard through a mutual friend that my parents had sold Melissa's apartment. They needed the money. I don't say that with satisfaction. I say it because I think the universe has a sense of irony that doesn't require my help. I'm telling you this story because stories like mine don't start with revenge. They start with being underestimated. They start with someone handing you the worst option and expecting gratitude. They start with being told you are the practical one, as if practicality is a consolation prize. But here is what I know now. Sometimes the thing they dismiss is the thing that saves you. Sometimes the ruins are the foundation. Sometimes the people who hand you scraps are accidentally handing you everything, because they never thought to look beneath it. They gave me broken walls and a sagging roof. They forgot to check who owned the ground. Look directly at camera, quieter, don't ever let anyone make you feel small enough to miss what you're standing on. If this story meant something to you, share it. Send it to someone who needs to hear it today. Subscribe if you're new, because every week I bring you a story about what happens when people finally stop accepting less. I'll see you in the next one.